Okay, so we'll go ahead and call this special Board of Education meeting to order, please. Suzette, can we do roll, knowing that we're going to have a person or two join us as the meeting starts?
Yes. Ms. Klug?
Here.
Mr. Sikich? Mr. Keller?
Here.
Mrs. Justum?
Here.
Mr. Ustruck?
Here.
Mr. Schultz?
Present.
And Mr. Lee will join in a second. I just got an email from him. Mrs. Kaiser's excused and President Emmons.
Here. Okay, so we will go on. Today we have a workshop for financial stability and efficiency on a facilities update. Caitlin, do you want to go ahead and get that kicked off?
Absolutely. Good evening, good snowy evening. We are doing a first of two, or actually second of two, facility updates. So our plan each year is to update the board on what we've been working on and our projects projected going forward. And so Steve has put together an incredible summary with pictures. Now, thanks Marty for the idea. Our analytical minds had everything in words and didn't even think about putting pictures on the PowerPoint. Pictures are worth 1,000 words. So we'll work through some of those and see the cool things that the facilities team has gotten done this year and our plans moving forward. So Steve, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully it will work. Is everybody able to see it?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so as Caitlin said, thank you for giving me the opportunity to provide a facilities and operations update.
Steve, you're on like a presentation mode. If you want to, we're seeing probably the same thing you are. If you want to just present how you had it before you clicked present, I'm guessing.
How's that?
There we go. Perfect.
Okay. So thank you again for giving me the opportunity to provide an update. And first I want to start with, over this last year, we had an opportunity due to some vacancies to look at the facilities department and do an analysis to see if we were operating the most efficient way, and if we had the right positions that we needed to really make the facilities department operate as smoothly as it could. So I talked about this initially with Caitlin, and then we also had some discussions with Mr. Jeff Thompson, and then ultimately with the superintendent as well. And so when the maintenance supervisor position became vacant, we didn't immediately fill that. And the duties at that time and then subsequently have been absorbed, the majority of them by me, and then some by the HVAC technicians that we already had on the maintenance staff. We added a custodial services supervisor, and that individual is responsible for all of the custodians and cleaners in the district that are our employees, as well as the assistant custodial services supervisor. And the custodial services supervisor is Tim Detloff, who used to be at Nathan Hale, and he works during the day. And then the assistant custodial services supervisor works second shift. So we have somebody who's available for support for our custodial staff and our cleaners all the time that they're working. We also reclassified some of all the facility attendants positions, and they became custodial leads. And so they're receiving a little bit more money, but they also have additional responsibilities now. They're being trained in, and where appropriate, they're going to get their swimming pool certification. They're also going to be certified in how to operate boilers, how to test boilers, what to look for to see if everything is operating correctly. And to also, more importantly, to know when something isn't operating correctly so they can get a hold of somebody right away. And as you may remember, at one point we had 4 pod leaders who were each assigned to a number of schools. One of the pod leaders left the district for another district, and the 3 remaining pod leaders, 2 of those were reassigned to the maintenance staff. So we have additional maintenance staff personnel. And then one of them, as I said, became the Assistant Custodial Services Supervisor, and they work second shift. And because of these changes, I feel that the department is going to be operating now more efficiently than it has in the past. There's going to be increased accountability, and before this shift happened or this restructuring happened, all of the employees that we had currently, we still have all of those employees. We didn't have to lay off any employees or just flat out say we don't have a job for you anymore. They all were given the opportunity to apply for different positions, and they all successfully did that, and they're all still working for us. And I feel that they seem happier now than what they were before. Some of the things that we did that were non-CIP related, we made some purchases over this last year, and all of the purchases were made with efficiency and safety in mind. And I have some pictures coming up, and I'll explain about some of these a little more detail so that you'll understand where the safety part of it came into play. But we have an electric pallet jack, as opposed to the old one that was manual. And if you had say a pallet of paper, we were having some employees every so often that would injure their shoulders or something like that, trying to pull, 1,000 pounds of paper. So now with the electric pallet jack, you push a button and it does it automatically. We bought an auger for loading salt into the salt hoppers on the back of the trucks and the Kubotas. And then we also had a new Kubota, because the one that it replaced, it wasn't able to handle the workload that it gets at the district level when it goes around to all the buildings. But what we did when we got the new one is we reassigned that one to a different building. The machine that was at that building went to a different building, and we just kept doing that. And so until we got to the worst machine at the end of the line, and then we got rid of that one. We did flooring replacement. There were quite a few of the sites. There were a lot of the classroom flooring that was old and outdated. It was starting to chip up. And a lot of it was 9-inch tile, and historically 9-inch tile has asbestos either in the tile or in the mastic or the glue that holds it in place. So anytime we do flooring replacement before we start that project, we have a contractor called EMC, and they come in and run tests on everything to see if there is any asbestos. And if there is, they contract with Robinson Brothers, who comes in and they mitigate all of the asbestos, and then they fill out all the paperwork and everything that needs to be done as well. You do have, when we're replacing the flooring, you can go over the tile that has mastic in it or asbestos in it, but I don't like doing that because eventually you're going to have to take off 2 or 3 layers then of the flooring, and it's easier just to do it right the first time. At Central High School, we had the bleachers there. They malfunctioned, and when they were going back in, they tore up some of the floor. So they also broke some of the mechanical parts that make the bleachers go in and out. So we repaired the flooring, and we also repaired the mechanical part that lets the bleachers come in and out automatically. And the bleachers there, that the parts are so old that the contractor actually had to manufacture by hand the parts to replace the parts that were broken. Then we did a cooler and freezer replacement at Frank Lloyd Wright, Hale, and Central. And that was funded through, was that a state grant, Caitlin?
The cooler and freezer project is through Fund 50. So entirely funded through our Fund 50 fund balance. That was part of our plan to reduce our fund balance and was a win-win.
And I'll show you some pictures later on of the new coolers and freezers. We did installation of bottle filling stations. We did that district-wide. Some already have it, but some sites might have only had 1 bottle filler, and they may have 3 levels. And so the goal was to get to where we had at least 1 bottle filler on every single level at each site. The hydroponics lab at Dotke, we worked on that. There was, and I think Dr. Lexman had something in his newsletter about that. It was an old dingy locker room on the 2nd floor, and we've been working on that probably for the last 6 months to get things ready for the start of school. And I have some pictures of that in there as well when we get later on in the presentation. We replaced the feed water system for the boiler at Horace Mann. It broke. And if we have a water heated boiler, if it doesn't have water, that could be a problem. So we got that replaced right away. We did a sewer pipe replacement at West Milwaukee. We did 75 feet of that. In talking with Asmir, he said that it had been plugged for a while. And depending on how much rain we got or how much fast the snow melted, it would back up into the building. So as soon as we got some halfway warm weather, we got 75 feet of that replaced from one drain into the next. And so that's all taken care of. We just finished up recently installation of internet access at WAC. And my understanding is the first game that we have on the 25th, I believe, I'm not sure about the scrimmage that's coming up, but we will be live streaming the games this year. And then we also did some catch basin replacements at Madison and also at 9333. Some of the capital improvement projects that we completed was roofing at Lane, Jefferson, Madison, and Walker. And if you remember, when we do a site, each site is broken, the roof is broken down into different segments that we call, we give them an alpha letter like A, B, C, D. We typically don't replace all of an entire building's roof at one time, just because it's so large of a project. So we do different parts in different years as is needed. So that's why, depending on every so often, you may see like Lane roofing for this year, but in 2 years, you may see Lane roofing again. It's not that the job wasn't done correctly, it's just that we're doing a different section of the building than we did before that. At Dotke, we repaired, repainted, and restriped the gym floor. So now it actually says Phoenix on it. It doesn't have Lincoln anymore. We did the security entrances at Irving Elementary and West Milwaukee Intermediate, and that was done through a DOJ safety grant. Reconstructed the south and the west parking lots at Nathan Hale. We removed the islands that were there. We also removed the light poles that were in the middle of the parking lot, and we put those on the outside of the parking lot now. For a couple of reasons. One is that it makes it easier to snowplow. You don't have to go around all the light poles anymore. The second reason is that we have LED lighting now, so we get better lighting, and we're also working with We Energies to get some focus on energy monies from that project as well. And then we also changed the direction of the parking. And by that, I mean, instead of having diagonal parking, now we had it just straight parking. And believe it or not, that adds stalls. So by the time everything was done, we gained about 65 parking stalls when that was all done. The other thing that we added additional catch basins that we talked with the city and the DNR and the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewer District, and they asked if that was something we would do. And since we were tearing everything up, we said yes, and so we did that. We also, the city came out, and what they wanted us to do is put little islands to the right and to the left of every entrance into the parking lot. And I didn't want to do that because then that's additional parts that we have to go around every time we snowplow. So what I did is I worked with the city, asked them, met with them out at the parking lot, asked them if we could put in one bigger island towards the far end, towards WAC. And they agreed that yes, that we could do that. And so that's what we did. So we have one bigger island now instead of, it would have been 8 or 10 smaller islands. So just, again, it makes it easier and more efficient when it comes to plowing. Oops, went too far ahead. Sorry. I guess maybe we are okay. So here's some pictures. On the top left, the first two there, you see boards. These are something that our maintenance staff worked on. And these are going to be workstations for the hydroponic lab at Dotke. We have metal bases that were fabricated and they were painted and they're already at Dotke. And then these boards will get delivered. I believe they were actually delivered later today. They unwrapped them so I could have a picture to show you. Then the middle picture where you see the security camera and the notice sign, this is not a joke. This is actually there because part of what Dotke is doing is they're going to have bees. So we installed a security camera and then a notice saying that the beehive is under 24 hours video surveillance. So people are aware that it's there. Then the picture on the top right is part of the enclosure that we made, and it's just right to the right of an exit when you come out of the school. And then you can see we have the sign there that says honeybees hard at work, do not disturb. So we talked with our insurer about what steps we needed to do to make sure that we were covered. And these are two of the things that they said that we should do, and we did them.
Steve, do you mind if I
And,
jump in just for 1 second there? That
Sure.
actually came out of part of our Shark Tank project from last year. So it was, we had a teacher who is actually our teacher who works with our students who have hearing impairments, who casually said one day, hey, I'm a bee farmer on the side. And I thought, wow, that is something I didn't know about you. And she said, do you have any students who you think might be interested in bees? I'm like, well, I could find some, I'm sure. So we proposed the idea as potentially a Shark Tank business for Dotke. And then Marty and I heard a presentation from 6 students who had samples of what honey products will look like once they can get a producing bee farm so that they can start to make honey products. So that actually all came, that and the aquaponics lab, from our learners, as opposed to sometimes coming from the big ideas that adults have. So it was really exciting opportunity for our kids.
Okay, thank you, Deidre. And then in the bottom row of pictures on the left-hand side, you can see the Phoenix, and that's at center court of the gym. And then at each of the ends, you can see it says Phoenix. So it no longer says Lincoln anymore. So they were very happy because they feel like they have their own identity now, because it says so on the gym floor. Then on the bottom right, that's one of the pictures of the hydroponics lab. And the tables that were there, some of those tables had been at Dotke before, but what we did is we took them out of there, took it down to 9333, and K2 fabricated those into the dimensions that they had requested, welded it all back together, painted it, and now they're being installed, or they have been installed at Dotke.
And if you don't mind, Steve, can I jump in really quickly to that one as well? Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but Doug, who is, what would Doug's title be?
Head custodian.
Head custodian, thank you. Doug, who is the head custodian, is actually leading the students and building the space quite a bit. So it has been super awesome to watch different departments within our organization kind of work together with and for our learners. And he's been a wealth of knowledge, and he is constantly telling them at the Home Depot what he's trying to do, and then trying to figure out how to apply for grants or get other opportunities. And he's really been invested in a ton of the things at Dotke. And it just speaks to the level of community that we're trying to build in our schools, that he's become such an important part of working with our learners every day. And when I've given tours to like the AASA and things like that, they're like, oh, what teacher is that? When we're walking around and introducing, and I say all the time, like, nope, that's Doug. He is our head custodian. He's not a teacher. And they're like, that's amazing that the head custodian is having that kind of involvement with students. And so that's been a lot of the work that Steve has led within that department as well. That's been super powerful and is just producing some really amazing things for our learners. The collaboration that we've been doing between Dotke and West Milwaukee will start their aquaponics lab. They're starting to sketch it out and figure out materials they would need. And then learners will be pitching that idea to Marty and myself and some of the other directors so that we could decide if we were going to fund that project coming off of some of the collaboration we've been doing between Dotke and West this year. So the work is not only happening, but it's growing all the time.
And if you see the boards on the back wall, those are recycled boards. And that used to be along that wall, there used to be like 10 or 12 shower stalls back there. And we took all of that out, took the piping out, and then redid the wall and then put some coverings on it as well. Then you can see here are some more of the the hydroponics, this part here, I don't know if you can see my mouse or not, but the white bucket there in the metal frame, that's where the actual fish go. And then, you know, the excrement, I think it's cycled through all this and then it comes over into here. And here's some of the tables again, and it has the buckets on there with water going through it. This is one of the stands here that will be the stand for the workstations that I showed you the boards from before. And then here, this used to be a wall that was a little higher, and then this is where the shower stalls were. And then this here, there's actually little foam pieces that are in there, and the little seedlings go in there, and then they grow in there. Then on the bottom left is the new Kubota with the plow on it, and then you can see the little orange in the back. That's the top of the salt hopper. This here is the auger, and so to make you understand why it's more efficient and why it's safer now, what we used to do when we would load salt into the hoppers, and here's one here, it says Salt Dog, is that we would have 50-pound bags of salt loaded onto a pallet. Somebody on the forklift would lift the pallet up to the height of the top of this. So one of the other workers then would stand on this 3-inch lip here, open up the 50-pound bags, and then turn and dump it into the hopper until they had it filled. Now what they can do is from the ground, they can lift the pallet up to the height of this. They take the bag, they open it up on the pallet, they dump it into this, they turn on the auger, it goes up and it goes down right into the hopper. So we don't have to have anybody standing on a 3-inch lip 5 feet off the ground, and it's a lot more efficient as well. And then this is the electric pallet jack. And you can see it comes in handy for using. This is some disinfectant that's since been taken out to the sites. And one of the nice features of this, like I said, not only do you push a button and it'll go forward or backwards, it also has additional safety features on it where if you have the handle here down and you're backing up and you're not paying attention to where you're going and you back into a wall, as soon as you hit this button here, it automatically stops it and moves it forward, so somebody doesn't get crushed then. But I forgot the top right-hand picture. I'm sorry. This is where the darker asphalt is. That's where the catch basin was starting to fail there. It had started to erode away. And this blacktop was down about 12 to 18 inches in parts of it. And then in the bottom right, that's one of the new freezers and coolers that we have. We replaced this wall here, and there's a storeroom behind there. And then this is the new door into the cooler. And if you notice that there's not much of a threshold here, and these are also safer. Not only are they more efficient and they're new and they're bigger than what they used to be, there used to be a ramp that would go into the freezer, but it was on the outside. So you had the ramp extend about 3 feet out from this door right in the middle of the kitchen. So anybody walking around could accidentally trip on that. So now we've removed that, and the ramp is actually on the inside on the floor of the freezer. So it's not external anymore. Here's another picture of one of the coolers. You can see it has a nice window on it, so you can look in there. It also has the electronic reading of what the temperature is. And that actually happens to be at Nathan Hale. This is the cooler. What happened before is there was a cooler and a freezer in this space. Now this is all a cooler. And the reason we were able to do that is because the picture on the top right, that is the door that goes into the freezer, and the freezer now is external to the Nathan Hale building. It's off of the food storage area, and it has its own door and its own freezer now. And then on the top here where it says Cookson, that is an automatic fire door. So that if there is a fire, that door will automatically come down. And then on the bottom left-hand side, you'll see that's the outside of the freezer. There's a fence around it. And if there were to be a fire and that fire door went down, this is a door here on the back end of the freezer, so that if somebody is in there and when there happens to be a fire, they can come out through that back door of the freezer. The middle picture, it's a freezer and a new cooler at Central High School. And what we did with that, the same thing, is we took the ramps that came out and now they're on the inside. And we also extended them out about, I think it was about 7.5 feet each. So now they're actually bigger than what they were before as well. And the picture on the bottom right, that is Central as well, but we redid all of the gas and the electrical, but we also redid all of the venting and the hood work. So that is all new as well as all new ceiling. And that, as Caitlin said before, was all paid through with Fund 50. So the top two pictures on the left, that is the parking lot or part of the parking lot at Nathan Hale. That was all done. You can see that we have the striping on there, the new blacktop. We have new curbing here. This is on the back side of the school. And the third picture here, what's important, a couple of things here is that one is this is the path that goes from the Hale parking lot to the football stadium. And one of the things that we did when we redid the lot and we moved the lighting is I added 2 light poles here and 1 here, because everybody I talked to said it was really dark after the football game walking from the football field over to the parking lot where a lot of people park. So now there are 2 LED light poles here with 2 lights on each pole. So it'll be a lot brighter now when people walk after a football game and it's dark. The other is that the curb that's here, this is not a traditional curb like you see over on the top left-hand side. It's still a cement curb, but what it does is it slopes up and there's no back edge of it. And the reason for that is that we go from Lincoln Avenue when we plow and we go back towards the stadium, and having that just the sloped concrete there, that allows us to push the snow off of there easier without wrecking the concrete curb then. And the picture on the top right and then on the bottom left, we redid the shot put areas that were at WAC. Before they were just overgrown and they couldn't really be used, and they not only were they an eyesore, but they were a safety hazard. So now we have new border on the edge of it. We put in some new gravel in there, and so now those can be used as well. The picture here, this is actually, there are 7 or 8 of these that are behind the bleachers at Central in the gym. And you can see this looks a little newer than the other. This was one of the pieces that were refabricated. And then on some of them, some of these pieces were refabricated as well. And what happens is this just slowly turns around and it drives these different poles like this out. And that's what moves the bleachers out and then also retracts them. And like I said, that was so old that they had to fabricate those pieces by hand. I talked about that we've been replacing some of the flooring in some of the classrooms. This is one of the classrooms at Franklin, what the floor looks like. In talking with the teacher, since they've been back, it had been carpeting in there, but it was really old and outdated carpeting. And in talking with them, asked if they wanted to have carpeting put back in or a hardwood floor like this, or a harder, looks like hardwood floor. And this is what they said they wanted. And so it isn't really hardwood. It is something that we can still take care of effectively and efficiently as a custodial staff, but it just gives a whole different vibe to the room than the old worn and outdated carpeting. And then the bottom right, this is a water bottle filling station. And like I said, we have one of those on every floor at every site. And then the red is actually a cap that we put over the drinking fountain so that the students couldn't use the drinking fountains, but yet they can still use the water bottle filling station to fill their individual bottles. And then this is the security entrance at West Milwaukee Intermediate School. And this set of double doors, actually I'll go to the middle picture here. The double doors were there before. What's been added is this part here, this 4 window section, and then this here. Before that was just the front of the building. And so what we did is we added another room there. And then you can see on the far right-hand side, there are 2 entrances now. We added this wall. So each foyer now has its own heater. And so in the morning when the students are arriving and in the afternoon when the students are leaving, all of these doors are unlocked and the students can come and go as they please. But during the day, when after school is started and the doors are locked, they have to come in these doors here, and then there's a transaction counter, which you see on the bottom left-hand side, and they have to come in there and talk with the person that's there before they can get buzzed in through the double set of double doors that are there. There's still a Prox card reader you can see here, and there's also one over there, or right in the middle there. So staff can still come in during the day, even when the doors are locked. But otherwise, visitors have to come in through these doors and they have to stop at this desk here. And then this is the 75 feet of sewer that was replaced. You can see it goes from one drain to the next. We put in bigger piping now than what was in there, and we cleaned everything out. And so there should not be any more problems like there had been in the past. And this is the security entrance at Irving. On the top left, this is what it looked like before, and this is where everybody came in and you push the buzzer up in this part here on the left, and then they let you in. This middle picture, now this is what the new security entrance looks like. You come off of this main sidewalk, and then you take a left and you go into the new entrance. The bottom left is what it looks like from the outside. When you get up close, the middle picture on the bottom, this is looking from just inside the office, looking towards the new security entrance. And so they have, we had desks that were there before, or modular furniture, but in talking with a company to redesign those pieces and put them the way that would make the office most efficient, because they were so old, it would have cost more to refurbish those and find new pieces than it was to just get new pieces to put in. So that's what we did there. And then on the bottom right, you can see this is on the inside of the new security entrance. And to the left is where you would come in from outside. And then to the right is where you would go into the office. And again, they come in here, they have to be buzzed in, and then they can go into the office and they get taken care of right down at this end here. This is just 4 pictures of some of the roofing that was done this last year. You can see they go up, they put the rubber matting up and they attach it to the building so that nothing comes in where the brick meets the roofing there. They use an adhesive to take this rubber and to put the rubber down so that it stays in place. And then on the bottom right, you can see where one of the roof drains are. They go around and they caulk that and they redo all of those as well. So some of the projects that we have scheduled for this year is we're doing roll filter replacement at Lane and Hoover. You've heard me talk before about MERV filters before and putting the increased MERV filters in the buildings. Well, some of the air handling units were old enough that they we would buy filters in rolls, and then we'd have to roll out the amount we needed, cut it off, and then put it into the filter holder. So what we're doing at Lane and Hoover is we're replacing those with filter mechanisms that will be able to handle the MERV filters in, and we'll be able to put those in instead of using the roll filter. And in addition, at the 3 air handling units that we're doing that at Hoover, we're also adding air purification systems to those new air handling units. So Hoover will have those 3 main air handling units will have air purifiers on them as well. Then CTE has made some related changes. And so at Hale, we're redoing the metal lab. We're taking the welding booths where they had been, we're relocating them to the opposite side of the room. And we're putting in new welding booths, we're putting in new electrical, we're putting in new exhaust, we're putting in new air intake. And so we're gonna have, that'll all be done. Right now it's scheduled to be done before the end of April. And then at Dotke, once school is out, we're going to expand the kitchen where the rolling overhead doors come down now for the kitchen. We're going to take that and move that all out about 20 some feet. And then we'll be able to have some CTE classes related to food service there as well. And in talking with the contractor and also with Steve Carr and with Steve Cosner, we felt that it was best that we wait until school was out to do this rather than trying to do it and then maybe not get done before the students came back. At Madison, the cement ADA ramp is cracking and the railing is starting to fall off, so we're looking at replacing that. At Jefferson, the main entrance, the vestibule is starting to rust out from water and salt damage. And so we're looking at just refurbishing that. It's not going to be a replacement, just a refurbishment. And then at Walker, we're looking at seal coating and restriping the north parking lot. And those we're still, our goal is to get those done this year yet. And then for next fiscal year, looking at the tennis court resurfacing at Hale, and doing some additional roofing at Wilson, Pershing, Hale, Madison, and Franklin. Some of those smaller roofing jobs, we're going to see if we can still get those done in this fiscal year. Their generator at Irving is old and worn out, and it needs to be replaced. We want to replace that before we find out that it doesn't work. I mean, it's still working now. It's just not as reliable as what we want. The exterior field house doors at Central, we're looking at replacing those. There again, because of the weather and settling of the building and that, the doors just do not close the way that they should. Some of them, it's very difficult to open even. Looking at possible work on the Central teacher staff lot, the parking lot there. Looking at possible driveway reconstruction at WAC. And this would be by where the field house and the concession stand is. Looking at repainting lockers at Lane, and then the Green Infrastructure Partnership Program with Mmsd, and that's at Mitchell, but then we're also looking at doing that at an additional elementary school. So now I'm going to shift to the Long Range Facilities Master Plan and give you an update on that. The facilities assessment was done at all the sites, and information was gathered from building staff, the maintenance department, architects, civil engineers, plumbing contractor, electrical and low voltage engineers, landscape architects, and then also a consulting cost estimator. We also did a building capacity analysis. We had an enrollment projection report done, and then that with other information was made into a CIP report. And what that does is it shows everything that needs to be done in the district, and it prioritizes it by category. And by category could be electrical, plumbing, mechanical, those type of exterior of the site. And so it prioritizes everything by category and site. It also categorizes a summary for the entire district. It does a site summary. It has detail by site. Excuse me. And it's also done in $2,023. And the reason for that is that the total is over 300 million, and we're figuring that if we were to go out for a referendum or decision is made at some point to do that, we probably wouldn't start doing any work until 2023. So we felt it was important to put the cost of all of this work in 2023 dollars, as opposed to put it in 2020 or 21 dollars. And then when we actually get to where we're doing the work, it looks like the cost is a lot higher than what we projected. Also, the facility advisory community team has been meeting, and there's over 65 representatives, and it's composed of parents, staff, and community members. And we've been meeting by Zoom. And ultimately, the FAC team is charged with making recommendations to the Board of Education regarding two major questions. And that's, how can schools be renovated and or replaced and/or consolidated in ways that inspire and shape learning for the future? And how can we do this in ways that are most cost-effective for our community? And so the meetings have been led by Bray Architects, C.G. Schmidt, and district leaders. And the members during the meetings have been introduced to a master plan framework parameters. And also they were, this last meeting, they got their first look at long range pathways. And those are potential solutions graphically presented to provide consistency and comparison during the facilities planning process. And you can see that the first 3 boxes here, those are meetings that we've already held. And the column on the right shows what we talked about at each of those meetings and what was discussed. And in the bottom row, you see that our next meeting is tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. And you can see what we're going to talk about there. And the long range pathways, but each of them, there's 9 of them that the committee is looking at. And what they have a format that's similar to this. What this one is this shows our current conditions. And in the big section here, these are our 11 elementary schools. And it shows the current enrollment and then the capacity for each site as well. It does the same thing for the 3 intermediate schools, and it does the same thing for each of the 3 high schools. And each of the different pathways, they have different grade configurations. So one could be 6-12, it could be K-8, it could be K-6, and then they have different configurations. And some of them also look at, well, what would it look like if we were to consolidate and only have 8 elementary schools as opposed to 11? And it's important to remember that all of the pathways that we've shown right now, none of them, other than the current conditions, have any building assigned to them, because we don't care about which buildings it is right now. Right now, what we're talking about is the philosophy of what do we want it to look like. And so we've removed the names from all of the buildings. As we get further along in the process, like 2 or 3 meetings from now, we'll start looking at assigning names to, once we reach a grade configuration that everybody's in agreement with, then we'll start assigning names to the buildings that we'll have. And then these are the meetings that are scheduled right now after the meeting tomorrow. And again, you can see that they're approximately we try to do every 3 weeks. And then we always meet from 6 to 8 p.m. And what we're talking about right now, the way the metrics have gone and some of the other information that we look at, that we plan on meeting on, our goal right now is on April 27th, that we would meet in person and we would meet in one of the auditoriums and everybody would be appropriately spaced and still have face masks, but everybody would be in person. And we just felt that as we start getting more and more into the details of all of this, that it's important that everybody is really face to face and we meet in person. So that's what our goal is right now, based on the metrics. As we get closer, and if it's safe to do so, that's what we'll be doing. And that's the presentation then. So if anybody has any questions or comments, I'd be happy to answer them.
I can only see a couple people right now, so do you have your hand up? Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks a lot, Steve, for the presentation. It's a lot of stuff that you and your team have accomplished over the course of this last year. A lot of things that I think are very good for the district. A lot of projects that have been sitting on the sideline for some time while we tried to get the funding to be able to do them as well. So it's exciting to see some of these things come to fruition and completion on that. I just had 2 questions regarding the presentation. First one was way back in the beginning. Regarding the training for after the reconfiguration of some of the custodial staff from pod leaders and then head custodians. So there were some, you said, that we're getting some certifications, is that correct?
Yes.
For some of the boiler work and so forth and so on. Is that something that that we are actually paying for, or like how does that work?
Yes, we're paying for that. Because we feel that it's important that they're responsible for that building, and they need to be responsible for the maintenance and the infrastructure of it as well. And we figured the best way to do that would be to give them proper training as opposed to, everybody then is getting the same message and the same training, and they'll actually have a certificate that says that they're a licensed boiler operator.
Okay. So is there any incentive for them to continue on with our district after they receive that certification? Would that make them more marketable in their field, and thus, probably see what I'm getting at here, provide the training, and then they move on to another district or another position now that they have that certification, and then we're back where we were before. Now we have to train new people. So is there anything that we're doing to kind of get some sort of a commitment from them that we're going to pay for this training for you because we want you to have these skills, but we also want you to have these skills in our district?
For the particular boiler training, we're not, because I think the training, the classes itself is about $300. So I mean, it's not that it's cheap, but it's not a lot of money. The other is that, yes, it probably does make them more marketable. But one of the incentives as well is that when we reclassified them, is that they all received, it wasn't to the same amount, but they all received quite a I think a good fair increase in what they were receiving, so that we're more comparable now with other districts in the area. So before, if we were $3 or $4 or $5 below what they could get somewhere else, another district might look more attractive. Now that they're close to this, the same other surrounding districts, and they have that additional responsibility, I think in the majority of cases they will decide to stay. Okay. Plus, like I said, now with somebody that's there to support them during the day and somebody that's there to support them at night as well, they have that additional support that they didn't, especially at night, that they didn't have before.
Okay. Yeah, that's the other question I had was regarding the how comparable you were to other districts. We're investing in these individuals, and I hope that they will invest in our district as well and keep their skills here. So that's just something I was wondering about.
Yes, so the other question I may add too. I'm sorry. What we're doing also is that we have head custodian meetings every month, and so we have some topics that we want to go over as management, but we also ask them to submit any topics that they have. And then we meet on Wednesdays, or we've been meeting on Wednesdays just because that was the easiest day to meet because there wasn't school in session that day. And so like I said, we meet once a month and we go over topics that are related to what's happened in the past month, and then topics that we know are coming up that are pertinent to what they're doing. And then they also have a binder that has information in it that is at the school, so that anybody at the school then can look at that binder and see the information. And they've been asked to share it with the rest of their staff. And I've been to all the buildings and I can see it either like one of them has it in the office and then others have it in the custodial office. So it is accessible for others to look at and see all that information as well.
Okay, thank you for that information. The other question I had was related to all the parking lot projects that we have. I brought this up before, and there was a note in the slide about Mmsd grant opportunities when we're doing these sorts of projects. Mmsd is very interested in limiting wastewater as much as possible from flowing into the sewage system to be able to reduce the burden on their treatment plants, especially during high water events. So was there any success in, the huge project we just completed at Hale, for instance, or any of the other future projects, and reaching out to them to see if there was any, funding support that we could apply for if we put in certain features when we were redoing these parking lots?
There wasn't at Hale, but at the Walker one that is coming up, we have been working with Mmsd and also with the DNR and the city so that we can have grant opportunities. And I talked with the gentleman who we would fill out the application for, and so I have the application, we're filling that out and we will be submitting it. But they also were part of the design plans for what the Walker catch basin and and all the retention pond and all of that. They helped in our design of that.
Great. All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Other board member questions? Jeff?
Sorry about that. A comment and a question. My comment is I appreciate the photos, because when I was reading through that, well, yeah, it was neat to read this, neat to read that, but to see the improvements speaks louder than words. So that was really nice. And the other question I have, very simple: who's a contractor for the roofing?
We work with a company called IRSC, and we contract with them, and what they do is they go every year, twice a year actually, and they go through all of our roofs with us, and they determine which roofs are in need. And they actually I have a binder in my office that has a condition of every single roof in the district. And then what they do is they create the scope of work for each of the roofing projects. They do all the advertising, they take all the bids. I mean, I get it as well, but all the bids come back in, then we sit down, we go through all the bids. We just had a Zoom meeting this morning where we went through the bids that we received for the roofing projects we'd like to do this summer. And there were 6 different vendors that submitted bids for the roofing projects that we have.
Oh, that's pretty good. It's like having a roofing contractor on staff.
Yes.
Thank you.
So it works out really well. And like I said, they write the scope of work. They interview everybody. They do the background checks and all of that. Then we sit down. I analyze all of that. I showed Caitlin the stack of the paperwork, and it's about 7 inches thick for the different roofing projects.
Well, I bet you that made her excited.
Yeah. She didn't want to help me read through them, though.
Steve and I have a lot of fun.
The question is, do their
Did you have
reports
questions
come
too?
with needs? Steve,
Who, me?
stopping.
Christine, I thought you had your hand up.
Yeah, I do. Because he's in presenting, I wanted to find out which page it is, and I believe it's page 13. We're at the Franklin School, the retaining walls on the east and the west side of the property. I'm not sure if I heard you speak about that. Is that part of what we plan on doing this next school year?
It's something that we want to look at, yes, because it's starting to deteriorate and it's starting to crumble. And so
Yeah.
it becomes a safety hazard. And so I'd like to take care of it, be proactive rather than reactive.
Right. Yep. Okay. And then too, I just wanted to, there was one other thing I was thinking about, but I just wanted to say, I really appreciate the way that you're such a wonderful addition to the team. I think going away from the pods and everybody having, kind of an input and always putting safety first with these projects and doing them right the first time is just, it's really incredible to see. And there was one other thing, but you can circle back to me later if I think of it before we leave.
Thank you for your kind words, but it really helps being part of a great team too, where I feel comfortable taking suggestions of possible changes in that to Caitlin and Jeff and to Marty. I've been in districts where you don't feel like you can do that, but I do feel like I can do that here, and I really appreciate that, and it makes it a lot easier.
Other board member comments, questions? Kind of scroll through everybody, make sure I get them all. Steve, any closing words? Caitlin, any closing words? Deidre? Marty?
I just want to say, commend Steve and team for the incredible work. We just did this in 45 minutes, but this was so many awesome projects. And Christine, you hit it on the head. Steve puts student safety first, but I would also say put students and staff first, right along with safety. So just always paying attention to the details and the teamwork and the thoughtful way he approaches all of these projects as a team. I appreciate working with Steve.
And that's the thing I was going to add as well. I also appreciate working with Steve. It's been unusual in my time in our district, and I've been here for a long time. I have never worked with a facilities team that is so invested in what's right for our learners. And Steve does not say no to very many of my crazy ideas. And I say things like, hey, Steve, what do you think about starting an urban bee farm? He'll say, oh, let me investigate the details on that. He starts there. And so that's been a joy and from our end. And it's such a beauty and a benefit to our learners in a way that's really powerful. And that's what we're all here for. But you don't often get that from a facilities team. So it has been delightful.
And I'll echo everything. Steve, you're just such a great addition. I'm so glad we convinced you to leave sunny California and come work with us. One of the things that I know is a little bit of kind of the line of thinking, about, we provide certifications, and does that then make an employee more attractive to go somewhere else? But what also occurs, and it really is because, Steve and the team are supporting things like a custodian at Dodke really getting invested in some of the project-based learning and helping build out a hydroponics lab. That's actually a retention strategy, right? So that it takes time away from the actual core responsibilities for that custodian, but that's a person that's really invested with us and our learners and probably not going anywhere, right? So that it's a really cool way to think about how we retain those employees. So I appreciate Steve kind of opening the door to those opportunities for the people that work for us that aren't, teachers, because everybody can contribute, that's for sure.
I remember what I was gonna say. I think Arbor Day is coming up really quickly, and I know that at Mitchell we lost a lot of trees. So just a little feather or a little Post-it note somewhere, if we can make trees happen there for Arbor Day, that would be great to see.
I believe that Mr. Johnson already has a plan for that.
And Christine, we have several students right now working on some internal greenhouses and a few of those things as well. So we will have some urban farmers in our hydroponics lab, as well as we have a few students trying to figure out how you repopulate our area and redo some of our green spaces. So we have put it in the charge of the kids.
Whatever happened to all the tomato plants?
The tomato plants tomato challenge went on and on all spring and all summer, and people donated some of them to different places. And there were a few of our employees who went down last weekend we got this Milwaukee to volunteer at some of their first grow spots. We have a couple of students who are already investigating their spring project and making their gardens bigger than they did last year. So yep, the idea was eventually, because the pandemic was only gonna last a few weeks. So the idea at that time was that we'd have like a vegetable garden or something going that we could all share in. We did not get to do that, but we have some ideas coming up for some projects that hopefully will spark something equally as magical as that did.
I did that tomato challenge last year after I read about it, and I ended up with 3 tomato plants that were each about 3 feet tall.
Yep, my son did that as his passion project at Walker, and we just finished with salsa and spaghetti sauce and whatnot because he became an expert grower. So we had more tomatoes than we knew what to do with by the end of the summer.
You need to, if we had a standing booth at the West Dallas Farmers Market, from our different schools and things like that too, that could kind of go into the community foundation or something like that too, to help fund additional programs and things. But with all these great ideas, I was kept thinking about the honey projects and things like that and all those kinds of things. But there's so many wonderful things that we're creating and building that consumers are going to want too. So in addition to the learning aspect, there's also business and economic aspect of it too, which again just continues with their ongoing learning. So that's a really cool thing.
Adam is currently researching how you make a greenhouse out of plexiglass, since we'll have a bunch of left over. I
want to sell some kits. Yeah.
Adam has been furiously engineering plexiglass greenhouses at home to see if there's a way we could figure out how to use those to build greenhouses at each of our schools. So, and Steve Carr has some great ideas for how he's going to build a whole construction management trades facility in the parking lot, in the back parking lot at Dodke, with some of the plexiglass as well. So we all have big ideas. We'll repurpose what we have somehow.
I hope that we film all of that when that happens so that we can showcase that too to the community and outside, that we are very resourceful and that we took some of those positive things after the pandemic and turned them into really, really great opportunities for our community and our kids. So awesome. Any other, oh, go ahead.
One of my restaurants that I work with gets produce from Greendale High School every now and then from their gardens and whatever they do. So I know there's a couple restaurants in West Allis that, you know, do some organic produce, and locally produce from our schools would be fantastic, I would think, in some of these restaurants.
It'd be fantastic to have the signs in the windows of the restaurants, like tomatoes provided by the West Allis West Milwaukee School District. That would be really cool. Great ideas. Anybody else have anything? All right, thank you so much for this presentation. These are always really great to see, and they're interesting and informative and just visually pleasing, and just knowing that we're really moving in the right direction. So thank you, Steve, and your team for continuing to keep all of that moving forward. So,
Absolutely.
all right, we will look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, enjoy the winter snow, everybody. It's coming down out there, so enjoy.